Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Battle Cry, where we get you up close with India's weapons, warfighters, and how this country defends itself. This is a special episode for more than one reason, but mostly because one of our most beloved made-in-India aircraft, the light combat helicopter Prachand, is finally in line for its most substantial order. Take a look.
Super boost for self-reliance. Big Prachand order for forces. India's homegrown light combat helicopters. Mega push for Atmanirbharta in defense sector. The biggest combat copter deal looms.
For a country that has the dubious distinction of being one of the world's largest importers of aircraft, weapons and other military hardware, a big deal for made-in-India aircraft or weapons is always a very, very heartening thing. And for me, this is especially sentimental because I've got a direct link with this helicopter. I was one of the first civilians to get a chance to fly in the Prachand light combat helicopter. And just a couple of years after a measly 15 of these helicopters were inducted into the armed forces, the government today has set the ball rolling on a 45,000 crore rupee deal for over 150 of these helicopters. Take a look.
Things are lifting off in a big way for Prachand. India's homegrown light combat helicopter, in service so far in painfully limited numbers, is finally in line for its first big-ticket order. With a measly 15 in service presently, the government has now set the ball rolling to give the made-in-India helicopter its due. The acquisition of 156 more of these battlecopters. That's 90 for the Army and 66 for the Air Force. With the tender issued to the helicopters maker Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, it's likely that a deal worth 45,000 crore rupees will be concluded this financial year. Orders for the homegrown combat helicopter have taken their time to come, but the platform has been logging valuable operational experience for the last few years. Deployed both in the desert sector of Jodhpur as well as the high-altitude environs of Ladakh. A demonstration of a helicopter purpose-built for India's unique and extreme operational areas. The LCH comes armed with 70mm rocket pods, Mistral air-to-air missiles, a 20mm chin-mounted cannon, and in the capability to deploy an anti-tank missile like the Indian Helena or German Pars 3. The LCH's flexibility will allow it to be deployed at short notice to forward airfields with the capability to target enemy tanks, bunkers, vehicle columns or logistical movements, disrupting any plans to shore up offensive power at the border. The LCH is true blue made-in-India combat helicopter, the lightest in the world, and when produced at a full rate with this upcoming order, it will also be amongst the cheapest. Equipped with the state-of-the-art avionics and electronic warfare suites, the Prachand boasts of enhanced survivability and situational awareness. Its dynamic design allows for precise targeting and effective engagement of ground and aerial targets, making it suitable for various roles including anti-tank, close air support, reconnaissance and potentially anti-submarine warfare in the future. By reducing India's dependence on potential future helicopter imports, the Prachand stands as a testament to the nation's commitment to self-reliance and technological advancement in the realm of defense aviation. With its combination of advanced systems and adaptability to various operational conditions, the Prachand holds the potential to bolster India's armed forces and enhance its defense capabilities for years to come. While Pakistan has ordered the Turkish-built T-129 attack and China builds the Z-10, the Prachand is evolving into a far more reliable machine in operational service, mostly because of the demands that are being and will be made on it. But above all, the helicopter entering service is made in India, and that means many of the headaches that come with foreign hardware, including premium price tags, simply evaporate. Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now is someone who knows the light combat helicopter program inside out. Wing Commander Unni Pillai, the legendary former chief test pilot for helicopters at Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, a legendary pilot in his own right and someone who has seen the project to fruition along with many other HAL projects. Wing Commander Pillai, always an honor, sir. Thank you for joining me on a day when the government has set the ball rolling on what will finally be the first respectable and meaningful and deserved orders for the Prachand light combat helicopters. Your first thoughts, sir?
Thanks a lot for having me. And, this was supposed to happen. I think government was waiting for feedback from the LSP which we had given earlier.
Yes.
And now that whatever inputs which we got from the users, we have ironed them out. And it's a beautiful machine which the nation requires, especially at higher altitudes, where, it's quick to deploy and, address firefight issues and things like that. It's a great moment for all of us who worked on the program and for HAL.
And the amazing thing, Wing Commander Pillai, is that even before these orders, even before the induction, these helicopters have actually notched up quite a bit of operational experience already, haven't they?
Yes.
I remember a pair of them being deployed in Ladakh. Some of them were stationed in Jodhpur, in the, where they are also, a part of a unit right now. So these helicopters, haven't just been sitting around. Even before the orders came in, they've been getting their flying legs. They've been clocking the hours.
See, normally what happens is, after the prototype stage, you have something called the limited series production, where it goes to the users, they try it out. I know there will always be some hiccups. So those hiccups, the design agency resolves them. And in the final production, variant, all these would be sorted out, and the perfect aircraft with the user wants would be given to them. So that is a normal, path which a project takes.
Yeah.
So this has been more or less expected.
And are the forces happy?
It has come.
Are the forces happy with the helicopter? I know we can't discuss the specific feedback details because those are of an operational nature. But broadly speaking, they are happy with the helicopter, sir? They are looking forward to these bigger numbers?
They are very, very happy. Both the units, the Army and the Air Force, are quite thrilled and with the performance. And now is the time to induct in larger numbers, which we are doing now.
Which means that when the helicopter is inducted in larger numbers, that will also give, HAL and test pilots and the design teams, perhaps to introduce many of the improvements that had so far not happened because those larger numbers were necessary. So in many ways, the larger numbers will bring in that kind of scale that will justify the bigger improvements that may be in the pipeline. Isn't that true also?
No, if there is an issue with an aircraft, which somebody points out, we always address it. So it is not that we are waiting for large numbers.
Right.
So most of the issues have been ironed out. Now it is just uh, you know, will production will start, and will, and I'm sure we'll be able to deliver before, you know, the due dates.
Yeah. And like you said, Wing Commander Pillai, this is a helicopter, probably the only helicopter of its kind in the world that has been
Yeah.
built for both, extreme hot, low altitude conditions like the desert sectors, all the way to the super high altitude, terrain of Siachen Glacier, etc. How did that happen? When you were testing this helicopter, this was actually designed from the ground up for India's very unique operational environments.
Yeah, our requirements are quite different than what anybody else uses.
Correct.
So it was very important that we, design for our own requirement, test it out, so that it meets all, in whether it's in the Himalayas, in the glacier, or in the deserts.
Yeah.
Our country has got a very varied set of terrain.
True.
So it should be able to operate everywhere, and we've ensured that it does.
Final question, sir. The question always of exports. India has started making its first steps towards meaningful exports. We've seen the BrahMos and the Pinaka rocket system, those kinds of things being exported to friendly countries. Something like the light combat helicopter seems to scream out the potential as far as export is concerned. With these large numbers finally being looked at by the Indian Armed Forces, maybe those export doors also will be opening?
Surely, because I know a lot of countries are interested, and see, they are also waiting for our armed forces to buy in large numbers. Okay. And now that has been done, and I'm sure a lot of countries will come up and, put in their requirements.
Yeah.
And see, a helicopter is something which is very useful for everybody.
Yeah.
And an attack helicopter, especially a lot of countries in and around, I'm aware, I'm not able to say,
Correct.
But
of course,
they are very closely looking at Prachand.
So this big order for which the ball has been set rolling by the government is going to open many doors. It's going to, improve the quality of missions for the Indian Armed Forces, the Army and the Air Force specifically, and then friendly countries who may want this helicopter will also soon perhaps have the option of looking at it in a much more serious manner and actually place orders. So this is a big milestone in terms of self-reliance. It's a big milestone for HAL. It's a big milestone for future helicopter pilots of the Army and Air Force who will be looking at a made-in-India frontline attack helicopter. Wing Commander Unni Pillai, always a pleasure. Congratulations to you and your entire setup that has been such an invaluable part of the journey of this amazing helicopter. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
And joining us now, very privileged to be joined by Air Chief Marshal Fali Homi Major, the only helicopter pilot to be the Chief of Air Staff, the Chief of the Indian Air Force. Someone who has left a long legacy for pilots and someone whose word is counted on by aviation watchers everywhere. Air Chief Major, a great pleasure to have you here on Battle Cry. Thank you so much for your time. Your opening thoughts, sir, on a very significant ball that has been set rolling by the government for the Prachand light combat helicopter, a made-in-India asset, that could be ordered in large numbers for the first time. That deal appears to be in sight now, sir.
Thank you for having me, Shiv, and I'm indeed delighted to hear about this news of the 156 Prachand helicopters for the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. And I think it is the right time for this helicopter to be inducted into the armed forces in large numbers.
Yeah.
Given our area of responsibility of both the Air Force and the Army, and the huge spread we have for using the very wonderful flying characteristics and the weapon load this light combat helicopter carries, I think it is great news for all aviators. Uh,
Yes.
of course, as you mentioned, this is going to take a little time by the time the contract is signed and the serial production starts. To me, it is actually a blessing in disguise because uh, all these little chota mota issues which the HAL was facing, they've got enough time now to iron them out.
Yeah.
And I have just a few points to make about this helicopter. And we need to tread this path very carefully and very meticulously so that you have an asset with you which will be of invaluable value to
Yes.
in operations starting from the deserts of Rajasthan to the heights of Siachen and elsewhere.
Right.
And given given the agility of this helicopter uh, and given the weapon load it carries, uh, there has to be a seamless and flawless cycle of production after ironing out all little issues so that it stops. I mean, you don't have to worry about, you know, supply chains, etc. These are things which
Yes.
need to be sorted out at the outset. Having said that, the core concentration on this helicopter, as far as the HL and of course the users is concerned, are the weapon systems on board, because without
Yes.
those weapons, this helicopter is of no use, and the fire control architecture. Now, we must also understand that I believe there is about 40% or so of, I don't know the exact count of indigenization in this helicopter.
Yes.
While that's a good beginning, we should not, right at the outset, soon as production starts, go in for large scale indigenization, but we should do it incrementally so
Yes.
that we get enough time for our own manufacturers, designers, etc., to settle down and keep introducing the correct and quality items. We
Yes.
should not hurry this process up.
Very,
Then I come to, as I said, weaponization is very important. You know,
yes.
the entire fire control architecture, etc. So far, from what I have heard and what I've seen in the aircraft, having flown it twice, that it is quite elaborate. But
Yes.
again, we should please, we must ensure that the supply chains and the manufacturing cycle is maintained, because
Correct.
we need something like an 80% serviceability of these helicopters, because these
Absolutely.
helicopters operate in small detachments spread all over the country.
Yes.
And therefore, the supply chain has to be very, very proper for
Yeah.
them to be available on the tarmac and for flying almost 80% of the aircraft. Now,
Chief, I just want
the
to ask you
other thing is,
one small interjection and one question, branching off from what you said. Your experience as a pilot, as a pilot, what kind of advantages are there in having an indigenous made in India machine, sir, as opposed to something that's imported where you might have to depend on an outside supplier for parts, etc.? What are the advantages for a pilot and a warfighter?
to begin with, an indigenous helicopter of this class is a godsend as far as I'm concerned, because
Yeah.
it is entirely up to you how you exploit this helicopter, what you add, what you remove, or what you do with it,
Yeah.
without the problem of sanctions and supply chain problems with conflicts around the world.
Right.
Uh, we must, that is why I said, while we must aim for indigenization, now this particular aircraft, helicopter, very wonderfully, is perhaps the only type in the world which operates with a fairly good weapons load at the altitudes where we want it.
Yes.
Because I'm quite sure that even other helicopters, attack helicopters manufactured around the world, do not have the hot and high capability which this helicopter has,
Absolutely.
and the weapon load that it can carry at those altitudes. Now, that's a huge advantage of being our own and home designed helicopter to meet our requirements, which is very difficult to find all these aspects in a helicopter which you import,
Yes,
because
true.
they make it for their requirements, whereas we made the LCH for our own requirement, and that makes a
Yeah.
huge difference. Also, the sometime back there were a few, design issues with the
Yes,
groove, which I believe have been sorted out now.
correct.
And by the end of June or something, all aircraft would be modified with the, newly designed control systems.
That's right.
Now,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
quite sure that to a very small extent, even the Prachand, the LCH would be, I mean, will be at an advantage once these modifications are done, because given the type of role this
Yes,
helicopter is going to undertake for the Air Force and the Army, what is required most definitely is survivability of the
yeah,
helicopter, and
yeah,
secondly, the agility at all altitudes and under all conditions of weather and otherwise, and terrain. Now, I think so far, with the 15 helicopters which both the Air Force and Army are flying,
yeah.
they are quite satisfied with its performance. But again, my main emphasis is supply chain and tarmac availability of these aircraft at 80% and above. That will
Absolutely.
not what make this helicopter a prize winner for the Indian Armed Forces.
One final question, Air Chief. And the prescription that you've given of how this needs to be done is very, very valuable, and I hope that the decision makers are listening very carefully, because you bring the weight behind your words is not just as a helicopter pilot, but someone who has led the Air Force, so you know exactly what you're talking about. But like you said, you've also flown the Prachand twice, and you've also flown helicopters of different types all across the world, Air Chief. So I wanted to ask you, just in terms of your experience, of course the Prachand will be improved. I'm sure there will be more refinements with larger numbers entering service. But what was the experience like as a pilot, getting in behind the stick? What was it like flying this Indian helicopter? What was your experience?
Shiv, what caught my eye the most was the excellent agility of this helicopter for all kinds of combat missions, and most importantly, for evasion tactics, etc. The this helicopter can really be thrown around,
Yeah.
and also the visibility in this helicopter for both the pilot and the weapons operator is absolutely fantastic. It's very well designed, and given the fact that it's an adaptation from the Dhruv onto this
Yes.
attack helicopter version, I think we've done a damn fine job in the country. And as I said, while we've got the design right, the tweaking which is required, minor tweaking,
Yes.
we have enough time to do it. And once the serial production starts, there should be a flawless flow of helicopters in large
Yes.
numbers into the armed forces, because they need them very, very urgent.
And
But otherwise,
I'm
it's a
yes.
fantastic helicopter to fly. I mean, of course, I just did 2 sorties, that's not too
Yeah.
much of flying, but you can get the sense of the aircraft after my experience,
Undoubtedly.
that this helicopter is a good machine and
And my,
worth
and my
exploiting.
big takeaway from speaking to you, Air Chief, apart from all the things that you've said, which matter a lot, is that this is a blessing in disguise. Even if it has taken a while for this big order to, sort of roll out, and there's still some time left for an actual order to be concluded, a blessing in disguise for HAL and all the other suppliers to really refine the supply chains and make sure that everything rolls out right from the get-go, and therefore the refinements will be much, much smoother. We're looking forward to a great legacy, a great induction of these large numbers of the Made in India Prachand. Air Chief Marshal Fali Major, thank you so much, as always, sir, for your wisdom and your words here on Battle Cry. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. Thank you.
Well, like I said at the start of the show, I was one of the first civilians to actually strap into and fly in a Prachand light combat helicopters, and I'm never going to stop mentioning that on Battle Cry. Take a look at my experience in this amazing Made in India aircraft. Say namaste to the light combat helicopter. Developed and test flown for nearly a decade by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, the light combat helicopter is not just made in India, but custom built for India's unique battlefield conditions, from the deserts of Rajasthan to the super high altitudes of Ladakh. But what better way to get acquainted with a light combat helicopter than by taking a spin in one? I was invited by HAL's test team to strap into this helicopter and get a never-before taste of what this Swadeshi combat chopper is truly all about. India Today has been invited to be the first journalist team to fly in and experience the light combat helicopter developed and tested by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. This is India's first attack helicopters. It has missiles, it has rockets, it has guns, and we happen to be the first ever media crew who's going to get a taste of the light combat helicopter. For a flight in the LCH, I have to get into the full pilot kit, from overalls to flying boots. Joined by HAL test pilot Wing Commander Subhash John, we walk out onto the airfield to the waiting helicopter, soaking in the unforgiving Bengaluru sun. And it is here that I receive a crucial part of the flying experience I'm about to have. A combat flying helmet equipped with a helmet-mounted sight. An electro-optical system used by pilots to point various weapons at their targets. But more on that in just a bit. First, the inside of the light combat helicopter itself. Constructed with a sleek tandem cockpit rather than the usual side-by-side seats on other helicopter types, the LCH from the outside sports a stealthy front profile that also gives adversaries a smaller, harder target to latch onto. Wing Commander Subhash and I belt up, and then the engines come on. The rumble of the twin Shakti turboshaft engines come to life, rapidly turning the rotors into a steady chop. The helicopter is now ready to taxi out. With all checks done and cleared by air traffic control, the LCH gently lifts off. In airspace over Bengaluru, the light combat helicopter is put through a series of maneuvers, demonstrating its agility in the air and carefully customized flying qualities. The effortless handling that Wing Commander Subhash demonstrates at low altitude validates the years of tough flight testing that has gone into refining the LCH into the flying machine it is today. Returning to the tarmac after a 25-minute flight, I've just had the most personal possible tryst with an aircraft that stands on the threshold of Indian military service. Well, that's it on this special episode of Battle Cry. Thanks so much for watching. The news continues on the other side.